The story that I want to share is about my grandma's experience trying to come to the United States during World War II and how she adapted to American society.
I was born August of 1934 in Ruskoce, post office Obrance, Slovakia. At that time it was Czechoslovakia. We had two flour mills, one a little notion type of a store run by one and only Jewish family in our town. And there were 70 houses in our town. It was a very small place, very primitive. Our streets were not paved. We had no electricity, running water, or indoor plumbing. My mother, being an American citizen, she was born in New Orleans, New York, and her parents decided to go back to Europe when she was 10 years old. And so she was an American citizen, and her parents went to Europe, her three brothers. So this is how my parents got married. After they got married and my sister and I were born, my mother and father decided they wanted to come to America. So they only had enough money to have my mother go first, and then she was going to work for a year or two and make some money for us to come. She got the passport for my sister and I because we're considered American citizens. She came to America and we stayed behind. We were supposed to come within a year or two following her. Everything was going well, and then the war was declared. They would not allow us to come. Well, the Red Cross would bring my sister and I because we were American citizens, but they would not let my father come. So he would not let us come by ourselves. So we had to stay there during the whole war. Well, my first experience of the war was the first time the German soldiers came marching through our town and stole my little black puppy. That upset me very much. And then soon after, they started bringing tanks and cannons and more soldiers, and they set a battleground in our town. My father felt we should try to come back to America. We went to Budapest, and they wouldn't let us on. We came home, so we had to just stay where we were. Then the war was really starting to come into our direction. And so my father moved my sister and I behind the battle lines to the Russian side because the war was back there, was finished there. So he took us to the other side and left my sister and I there for 2 weeks while he was working with underground. Because my father was working with the underground, helping his Jewish friends. Actually, the parents of his friends were all killed. They were, in the camp. They were killed, and the two brothers survived. And so my father worked with them, and they were helping other people to escape wherever they were, were doing. My father was always beaten and taken in, and then, they dump him back home. But anyway, he survived, and he was glad he did it. And so then we stayed there, and it was pretty bad. We used to look towards the direction of our town. We could see the lights being at night and the bombings and everything else. And so after the battle was over in our town, my father got back, and we walked over through the mountain, forest, and back into our town. But before we could get in there, we had to watch because our town was surrounded by mines, and there were dead bodies all over. Okay, so we were crossing the river, and the river was full of bodies. And my father did stop and pick up some blankets off the soldiers and stuff so we would have them. And then a couple of days later, they buried all these people, these guys in our churchyard in 2 gravesites. They were like, I don't know how many bodies they put in each gravesite, and just piled them on and covered them. Our house was, of course, bombed. We couldn't stay at our house, so we had to move in with my aunt. And things started getting back to normal. People went back to work on their fields and stuff. And we, as a matter of fact, we all had to work in the fields. Learned to read Russian because my grandma evidently was Russian, and she only read Russian. And she read the Bible every day. We read with her the Bible, and so I learned to read Russian. That was my first reading language. And then we went to school, so we started learning Slovak, of course. But after the war, since our school was bombed, we had to go to the next town, and we all used to walk over there. And by then we had to learn Slovak and Hungarian, and I didn't think it was necessary for me to learn Hungarian because we were planning to go to America, and I wanted to learn American English. I didn't want to learn Hungarian, so I didn't like studying it, so consequently I got a very bad grade in it. And the teacher hung a big sign on my back saying, "Dummy." And I told her I didn't care. I'm not going to be here next school season. I'm going to America. And I wanted to learn English. And then we tried to come to America. We went to Prague again. And they wouldn't let us through yet. They said they weren't taking anybody over to the United States, so we couldn't come. So then we found out the war was over. My father tried again, so he figured we'll go to Prague. But we went over there, and we tried to get on a boat, and they said no, they're only taking the Russian Jews. They were being evacuated. But my father told my sister and I to throw a fit, cry that we want to see our mother. And so that's what we did. Since our passports were from Chicago, they finally decided to let us go. So we were the only Christians on the boat. I think the boat was called Gutenberg. The trip on the boat took 1 week also. I was very sick. Actually, they said I was malnourished. I was seasick. I never got out of the cabin. My only memory of that is I had some type of a surgery on boat. I don't know what was it. We never understood it. I was really in pretty bad shape. So when we got off the boat, and the guy over there checking us out looked at me and he said, "No, you can't enter the country. You're too sick. You can't come in." So my father had to convince them that, well, my mother worked as a nanny at a doctor's family. He, said that they will take care of me and make sure everything's okay. So they finally let us out. They put us on a train, and we came to Chicago. When we came to Whiting, I met my mother. I did not remember her. My sister didn't either. It was very hard. This was a strange woman to us. The only English word I knew was hello. We came like in July or that's the summer of 1946. My mother signed us for school at St. John in Whiting, a Catholic school. They put my sister and I in first grade. We did not have bilingual teacher or anything. We were put in there and you either sink or swim. By then I was 12 and my sister was 10, almost.
So what do you think the moral of your story is?
The thing is, be focused on what's coming, what you need to accomplish, and don't forget where you were, but build on it and grow.